Daniel's cousin Tell said, wide-eyed. All the unmarried women, and some of them married. You should have seen it, parent. I've seen tinker women dance before, Tell. Apparently, he had not kept his voice clear of what he had felt watching them, for Fail said dryly, You've seen the Taganza, have you? Someday, if you are good, I may dance the Sasara for you, and show you what a dance really is. Isla gasped in recognition of the name, and Fail went even redder than she had inside. Perrin pursed his lips. If this Sasara set the heart pounding any harder than the tinker women's swaying, hip-rolling dance, the Taganza, was it? He definitely would like to see Fail dance it. He carefully did not look at her. Rain came, in the same bright green coat, but trousers redder than any red Perrin had ever seen before. The combination made his head ache. Twice you have visited our fires, Perrin, and for the second time you go without a farewell feast. You must come again soon so we can make up for it. Pushing away from Fail and Isla, he could stand by himself at least. He put a hand on the wiry man's shoulder. Come with us, Rain. No one in Emmonsfield will harm you. At worst, it's safer than out here with the Trollocs. Rain hesitated, then shook himself.
Hey, movie fan, how you doing?
I do not know how you can even make me consider such things. Journey, he spoke loudly.
I'm just on a different spot. I didn't feel like unloading my chair over here,
where we will be safe from Trollocs.
Setting everything up.
Who
So
wishes to go?
I'm kind of just on the floor for right now.
Some women gathered their children close, and the children hid in their skirts as if the very idea.
As you can see, my chair is loaded up with clothes and shirts and pillows, as you can see, that don't fit in my dresser no more. Because my dresser.
The Mahdi shrugged. Your concern warms me, but we will be safe if the light wills it. The way of the leaf is not only to do no violence, Isla said gently, but to accept what comes.
Oh, shit.
The leaf falls in its proper time uncomplained.
Well, not too bad. Can't complain too much.
For our time. Perrin wanted to argue with them, but behind all the warmth and compassion on their faces lay a stony firmness. He thought he would get Bane and Chia to don dresses and give up their spears, or two, before he made these people budge an inch. Rain shook Perrin's hand, and with that the tinker women began hugging the Two Rivers lads, and Ivan too. And the tinker men began shaking hands, all laughing and saying goodbyes and wishing everyone a safe journey, hoping they would come again. Almost all the men did. Aram stood off to one side, frowning to himself, hands thrust into his coat pockets. The last time Perrin met him, he had seemed to have a sour streak. Odd for a tinker. The men did not content themselves with shaking Fail's hand, but hugged her. Perrin kept his face smooth, and the younger man became overly enthusiastic, only grinding his teeth a little. He a woman much younger than Isla hugged him. Somehow, even while Fail was letting some skinny, gaudy-coated tinker fold his arms around her and try to squeeze her flat, she stood guard on him like a mastiff. Women without gray in their hair took one look at her face and chose someone else. Meanwhile, Will appeared to be kissing every woman in the camp. So was Ban, and his nose. Even Ivan was enjoying himself, for that matter. It would serve Fail right if one of those fellows cracked a rib for her. Finally, the tinkers moved back, except for Rain and Isla, opening a space around the Two Rivers folk. The wiry, gray-haired man bowed formally, hands to chest. You came in peace. Depart now in peace. Always will our fires welcome you. The way of the leaf is peace. Peace be on you always, Perrin replied, and on all the people. Light be it so. I will find the song, or another will find the song, but the song will be sung this year or in a year to come. He wondered if there had ever been a song, or if the Tuathalan had begun their endless journey seeking something else. Elias had told them they did not know what song, only that they would know it when they found it. Let them find safety, at least. At least that.
I hope everyone's
As it
doing
once
good
was,
tonight.
so shall it be again. World without end. World without end. The Tuathalan responded in a solemn murmur. World and time without end. A few final hugs and handed round, while Ivan and Fail were helping Perrin up on Stepper. A few last kisses collected by Will. And Bam. Bam. And his nose. Others, the badly wounded, were half lifted onto their horses, with tinkers waving as if to old neighbors off on a long journey. Rain came to shake Perrin's hand. Will you not reconsider? Perrin asked. I remember hearing you say once there was wickedness loose in the world. It's worse now, Rain. And here. Peace be on you, Perrin, Rain replied, smiling. And on you, he said sadly. The Aiel did not appear until they were a mile north of the Tinker camp, Dane and Chiad looking to Fail before trotting ahead to their usual place. Perrin was not sure what they thought might have happened to her among Tuathalan. Gaul moved in beside Stepper, striding easily. The party was not moving very fast, with nearly half the men walking. He glanced at Ivan measuringly, as usual, before turning to Perrin. Your injury is well? His injury hurt like fury. Every step his horse took jolted that arrowhead. I feel fine, he said, not gritting his teeth. Maybe we'll have in Emmons Field tonight. And you? Did you pass a good night playing Maiden's Kiss? Gaul stumbled and nearly fell on his face. What is the matter? Who did you hear suggest this game? The Aielman said quietly, staring straight ahead. Chiad. Why? Chiad, Gaul muttered. The woman is Goshin. Goshin! I should take her back to Hot Springs as Guy Shine. The words sounded angry, but not his odd tone. Chiad. Will you tell me what is the matter? A Myrddraal is less cunning than a woman, Gaul said in a flat voice, and a Trolloc fights with more honor. After a moment he added, in a fierce undertone, and a goat has more sense. Quickening his pace, he ran forward to join the two maidens. He did not speak to them, as far as Perrin could make out, only slowed to walk alongside. Did you understand any of that? Perrin asked Ivan. The warder shook his head. Fail sniffed. If he thinks to make trouble for them, they will hang him by his heels from a branch to cool off. Did you understand? Perrin asked her. She walked along, neither looking at him nor answering, which he took to mean she did not. I think I might have to find Rain's camp again. It has been a long time since I saw the Taganza. It was interesting. She muttered something under her breath, but he caught it. You could do with hanging by your heels yourself. He smiled down at the top of her head. But I won't have to. You promised to dance this Sasara for me. Her face was crimson. Is it anything close to the Taganza? I mean, there is no point otherwise. You muscle-brained oaf! She snapped, glaring up at him. Men have thrown their hearts and fortunes at the feet of women who dance the Sasara. If Mother suspected I knew it. Her teeth clicked shut as though she had said too much, and her head whipped back to face forward. Scarlet mortification covered her, from her dark hair down to the neck of her dress. Then there isn't any reason for you. My heart, such as they are, already lie at your feet. Fael missed a step, then laughed softly and pressed her cheek against his booted calf. You are too clever for me, she murmured. One day I will dance it for you and boil the blood in your veins. You already do that, he said, and she laughed again. Pushing her arm behind his stirrup, she hugged his leg to her as she walked. After a while, even the thought of Fail dancing was separated from the tingle. There must be something to top that. Could not compete with the pain in his side. Every stride Stepper took was agony. He held himself upright. It seemed to hurt a fraction less that way. Besides, he did not want to spoil the lift that Duathlon had given everyone's spirits. The other men were sitting up straight in their saddles, too, even those who had been hunched over and clinging the day before. And Ban and Daniel and the others walked with heads up. He would not be the first to slump. Will began to whistle Coming Home from Tarwin's Gap, and 3 or 4 more took it up. After a time, Ban began to sing in a clear, deep voice. My home is waiting there for me and the girl I left behind. Of all the treasure that waits for me, that's what I want to find. Her eyes so merry, her smile so sweet, her hug so warm, and her ankle neat. Her kisses hot, now there's a treat. If there's a treasure greater, it lies not in my mind. More joined in on the second verse until everyone sang, even Ivan. And Fail. Not Perrin, of course. He had been told often enough that he sounded like a stepped-on frog singing. Some even fell into step with the music. Oh, I have seen stark Tarwin's Gap and the Trollocs' raving horde. I have stood for the Halfman's charge and walked on death's cold board. But a winsome lass, she waits for me for a dance and a kiss 'neath the apple tree. Perrin shook his head. The day before, they had been ready to run and hide. Today they sang about a battle so long ago that it had left no memory but this song in the 2 rivers. Perhaps they were becoming soldiers. They would have to, unless he managed to close that waygate. Farms began to appear more often, closer together, until they traveled along hard-packed dirt between bordered by hedges or low, rough stone walls. Abandoned farms. No one here clung to the land. They came to the old road, which ran north from the White River, the Matherendrell, through Devon Ride to Emmons Field, and at last began to see sheep in the pastures. Great clumps, like a dozen men's flocks gathered together, with 10 shepherds where there once would have been 1, and half of them grown men. Bow-armed shepherds watched them pass, singing at the top of their lungs, not knowing quite what to make of it. Perrin did not know what to make of his first view of Emmons Field, and neither did the other 2 rivers men, from the way their singing faltered and died. The trees, fences, and hedges closest to the village were simply gone, cleared away. The westernmost houses of Emmons Field had once stood among the trees on the edge of the westwood. The oaks and leatherleaf between the houses remained, but now the forest's brim stood 500 paces away, a long bowshot, and axes rang loud as men pushed it back farther. Row on row of waist-high stakes, driven into the ground at an angle, surrounded the village, a little out from the houses, and presented a continuous hedge of sharpened points, except where the road ran in. At intervals behind the stakes stood like sentries, some wearing bits of old armor, or leather shirts sewn with rusty steel discs, a few indented old steel caps with boar spears, or halberds rooted out of attics, or bush hooks fitted to long poles. Other men and boys were up on some of the thatched roofs with bows. They stood when they saw Perrin and the others coming, and shouted to people below. Beside the road, behind the stakes, stood a contraption of wood and thick twisted rope, with a nearby pile of stones bigger than a man's head. Ivan noticed Perrin frowning at it as they came closer. Catapult, the warder said. 6 so far. Your carpenters knew what to do once Tomas and I showed them. The stakes will hold off charging Trollocs or White Cloaks, either one. He might have been discussing the prospects for more rain. I told you your village was preparing to defend itself. Fail sounded fiercely proud, as though it were her village. A hard people for such a soft land. They could almost be Saldean. Moraine always said Manetherin's blood runs strong here still. Aaron could only shake his head. The hard-packed dirt streets were nearly crowded enough for a city, the gaps between houses filled with carts and wagons, and through open doors and unshuttered windows he could see more people. The crowd parted before Ivan and the Aiel, and rustling whispers accompanied them along the street. It's Perrin Goldeneyes! Perrin Goldeneyes! Perrin Goldeneyes! He wished they would not do that. These people knew him, some of them. What did they think they were doing? There was horse-faced Nisa Aellen, who had paddled his 10-year-old backside that time Matt talked him into stealing one of her gooseberry pies. And there was pink-cheeked, big-eyed Celia Cole, the first girl he had ever kissed, and still pleasingly plump. And Pelle Dare, with his pipe and his bald head, who had taught Perrin how to catch trout with his hands. And Days Conger herself, a tall, wide woman who made Alsbeth Luhan seem soft, with her husband Wit, a scrawny man overshadowed as always by his wife. And they were all staring at him and whispering to the people from off, who might not know who he was. When old Sen Bowie lifted a little boy up on his shoulder, pointing at him and talking enthusiastically to the boy, Perrin groaned. They had all gone mad. Townsfolk trailed after Perrin and the others, around them, in a parade that rode a swell of murmurs. Chickens scurried every which way under people's feet. Bawling calves and pigs, squealing in pens behind the houses, competed with the noise of the humans. Sheep crowded the green, and black and white milk cows cropped the grass in company with flocks of geese, gray and white. And in the middle of the green rose a tall pole, the red-bordered white banner at its peak, rippling lazily, displaying a red wolf's head. He looked at Fael, but she shook her head, as surprised as he. A symbol. Perrin had not heard Baron's approach, though now he caught hushed whispers of Aes Sedai floating around her. Ivan did not look surprised. People stared at her with awe-filled eyes. People need symbols, Baron went on, resting a hand on Stepper's shoulder. When Ilana told a few of the villagers how much Trollocs fear wolves, everyone seemed to think this banner a grand idea. Don't you, Perrin? Was there a dryness in her voice then? Her dark eyes looked up at him bird-like. A bird watching a worm. I wonder what Queen Morghese will think of that, Fael said. This is part of Andor. Queens seldom like strange banners being raised in their realms. That's nothing but lines on a map, Aaron told her. It was good to be still. The throbbing from the arrowhead seemed to have abated somewhat. I did not even know we were supposed to be part of Andor until I went to Camelin. I doubt many people here do. Rulers have a tendency to believe maps. There was no doubt of the dryness in Fael's tone. When I was a child, there were parts of Saldeia that had not seen a taxman in 5 generations. One's father could turn his attention from the Blight for a time. Zenobia made sure they knew who their queen was. This is the 2 rivers, he said, grinning, not Saldeia. They did sound very fierce up there in Saldeia. As he turned back to Varen, the grin became a frown. I thought you were hiding who you are. He could not say which was more disturbing. Aes Sedai there in secret, or Aes Sedai in the open. The Aes Sedai's hand hovered an inch from the broken-off arrow jutting from his side. Something tingled around the wound. Oh, this is not good, she murmured. Caught in the rib and some infection in spite of that poultice. This needs Alana, I think. She blinked and pulled her hand back. The tingle went too. What? Hiding? Oh, with what has been stirred up here now, we could hardly remain hidden. I suppose we could have gone away. You wouldn't want that, would you? There was that sharp, considering, bird-like stare again. He hesitated and finally sighed. I suppose not. Oh, that is good to hear, she said with a smile. Why did you really come here, Baron? She did not seem to hear him, or did not want to. Now, we need to see to that thing in you, and these other lads must be looked after too. Alana and I will see to the worst, but the men with him were as stunned by what they found here as he was. Ben scratched his head at the banner, and a few just stared around in amazement. Most looked at Baron, though, wide-eyed and uneasy. They had surely heard the whispers of Aes Sedai. Perrin was not escaping those looks entirely himself, he realized, talking to an Aes Sedai as though she were just any village woman. Baron considered them right back, then suddenly, without seeming to look, reached behind her to snatch a girl of about 10 or 12 out of the onlookers. The girl, her long dark hair caught up with blue ribbons, went rigid with shock. You know Days Conger, girl? Baron said. Well, you find her and tell her there are injured men who need a wisdom's herbs. And tell her to jump. You tell her I'll have no patience with her airs. You have that? Off with you. Baron did not recognize the girl, but evidently she did know Days, because she flinched at the message. But Baron was an Aes Sedai. After a moment of weighing, Days Conger against an Aes Sedai, the girl scampered away into the crowd. And Alana will take care of you, Baron said, peering up at him again. He wished she did not sound as though there might be two meanings to that. Chapter 43. Care for the Living. Taking Stepper's bridle, Baron led him to the wine spring in herself, the crowd melting back to let her through, then falling in after. Daniel and Ban and the others trailed along on horse and afoot, kin mingling with them now. Astounded as they were by the changes in Emond's Field, the lads still showed their pride by striding, even if they limped, or sitting up straighter in the saddle. They had faced Trollocs and come home. But women ran their hands over sons and nephews and grandsons, often biting back
tears. I'll be right back, everyone.
And their low moans made a soft, pained murmur. Tight-eyed men tried to hide their worries behind proud smiles, clapping shoulders and exclaiming over newly begun beards, yet frequently their hugs just happened to turn into a shoulder to lean on. Sweethearts rushed in with kisses and loud cries, equal parts happiness and commiseration. And little brothers and sisters, uncertain, alternated between fits of weeping and clinging in wide-eyed wonder to a brother everyone seemed to be taking for a hero. It was the other voices Perrin wished he could not hear. Where is Kenley? Mistress Ahan was a handsome woman, with streaks of white in her nearly black braid, but she wore a fear-filled frown as she scanned faces and saw eyes flinch from hers. Where's my Kenley? Billy? Old Hugh Aldai called uncertainly. Has anyone seen Billy Aldai? Hugh, Jared, Jim, Cully. In front of the inn, Perrin fell out of the saddle in his need to escape those names, not even seeing whose hands caught him. Get me inside, he grated. Inside. Tevin! Harl! Head! The door cut off the heart-lost wails and the cries of Dale Altaran's mother for someone to tell her where her son was. In a Trolloc cookpot, Perrin thought, as he was lowered into a chair in the common room. In a Trolloc's belly, where I put him, Mistress Altaran. Where I put him. Thail had his head in her hands, peering into his face worriedly. Care for the living, he thought. I'll weep for the dead later. Later. I'm all right, he told her. I just got a little lightheaded dismounting. I've never been a good rider. She did not seem to believe him. Can't you do something? She demanded of Baron. The Aes Sedai calmly shook her head. I think better not, child. A pity neither of us is yellow, but Alana is still a much better healer than I. My talents lie in other directions. Ivan will bring her. Wait with patience, child. The common room had been turned into an armory of sorts. Except in front of the fireplace, the walls were a solid mass of propped spears of every description, with the occasional halberd or bill mixed in, and some pole arms with oddly shaped blades, many pitted and discolored where old rust had been scoured away. Even more surprisingly, a barrel near the foot of the stairs held swords all jumbled together, most without scabbards and no two alike. Every attic within 5 miles must have been turned out for relics, dust-covered for generations. Perrin would not have suspected there were 5 swords in the whole 2 rivers. Before the white cloaks and trollocs came, anyway. Gaul took a place off to one side, near the stairs that led up to the inn's rooms and the Alvir's living quarters, watching Perrin, but plainly aware of Varen and every move she made. On the other side of the room, watching Fail and all else, the 2 maidens cradled their spears in the crook of an elbow and took a hip-shot stance that seemed at once casual and yet balanced on the toes. The 3 young fellows who had carried Perrin in shifted their feet by the door, staring at him and the Aes Sedai and the Aiel with equally wide eyes. That was all. The others, Perrin said, they will be taken care of. Varen interrupted smoothly, seating herself at another table. They will want to be with their families. Much better to have loved ones close. Perrin felt a stab of pain. The graves below the apple trees flashed in his mind, but he pushed it down. Take care of the living, he reminded himself. The Aes Sedai brought out her pen and ink and began making notes in that small book in a precise hand. He wondered whether she cared how many Two Rivers folk died, so long as he lived, to be used in the White Tower's plans for Rand. Fail squeezed his hand, but it was to the Aes Sedai that she spoke. Should we not take him up to a bed? Not yet, Perrin told her irritably. Varen looked up and opened her mouth, and he repeated in a firmer voice, not yet. The Aes Sedai shrugged and went back to her note-taking. Does anyone know where Loyal is? The Ogier, one of the 3 by the door said. Dav Aelen was stockier than Matt, but he had that same twinkle in his dark eyes. He had the same rumpled, uncombed look about him as Matt, too. In the old days, what little mischief Matt did not get up to, Dav did, though Matt usually led the way. He's out with the men clearing back the westwood. You'd think we were cutting down his brother every time we cut a tree. But he clears 3 to anybody else's 1 with that monstrous axe he had Master Luhan make. If you want him, I saw J.M. Thane running to tell them you had come in. I'll bet they all come to get a look at you. Peering at the broken-off arrow, he winced and rubbed his own side in sympathy. Does it hurt much? It hurts enough, Perrin said curtly. Coming to get a look at him. What am I, a gleeman? What about Luke? I don't want to see him, but is he here? I'm afraid not. The second man, Elam Doubtry, rubbed his long nose. Incongruous with his farmer's wool coat and his cowlick, he wore a sword at his belt. The hilt had been freshly wrapped in rawhide, and the leather scabbard flaked and peeling. Lord Luke is off hunting the Horn of Valir, I think. Or maybe Trollocs. Dav and Elam were Perrin's friends, or had been, companions in hunting and fishing, both his age near enough, but their thrilled grins made them seem younger. Either Matt or Rand could have passed for 5 years older at least. Maybe he could too. I hope he comes back soon, Elam went on. He has been showing me how to use a sword. Did you know he's a hunter for the Horn? And a king if he had his rights. Of Andor, I hear. Andor as queens, Perrin muttered absently, meeting Fail's gaze. Not kings. So he is not here, she said. Gaul shifted slightly. He looked ready to go hunting for Luke, his eyes blue ice. It would not have surprised Perrin to see Bane and Chiad bail themselves on the spot. No, Varen said vaguely, manifestly more intent on her notes than what she was saying. Not that he hasn't been a help sometimes, but he does have a way of causing trouble when he is here. Yesterday, before anyone knew what he was doing, he led a delegation out to meet a White Cloak patrol and told them Emmons Field was closed to them. He apparently told them not to come within 10 miles. I cannot approve of White Cloaks, but I do not suppose they took that very well. Not wise to antagonize them more than is strictly necessary. Frowning at what she had written, she rubbed her nose, seemingly unaware of leaving a smudge of ink. Perrin did not much care how the White Cloaks took anything. Yesterday, he breathed. If Luke had come back to the village yesterday, it was not likely he could have had anything to do with Trollocs being where they were not expected. The more Perrin thought about how that ambush turned around, the more he thought the Trollocs must have been expecting them, and the more he wanted to blame Luke. Wanting won't make a stone cheese, he muttered. But he still smells like cheese to me. Dav and the other two looked at each other doubtfully. Perrin supposed he must not seem to be making much sense. It was a bunch of Coplands, mainly, the third fellow said, in a startlingly deep voice. Dahl and Hari and Dag and Ewell. And with Conger. Days gave him a fit over it. I heard they all liked the White Cloaks. Perrin thought the bass-voiced fellow seemed familiar. He was younger than Elam and Dab by 2 or 3 years, yet an inch taller, lean-faced, but with wide shoulders. They did, the fellow laughed. You know them. They drift naturally toward anything that makes trouble for somebody else. Since Lord Luke has been talking, they're all for marching up to Watch Hill and telling the White Cloaks to get out of the Two Rivers. Anyway, they're for somebody else marching up there. I think they mean to be well back in the pack. If that face had been pudgy and half a foot or more nearer the ground. Owen Fingar, Perrin exclaimed. It could not be. Ewan was a stout, squeaky little nuisance who tried to crowd in whenever the older fellows got together. This lad would be as big as he was, or bigger, by the time he stopped growing. Is that you? Ewan nodded with a broad grin. We've been hearing all about you, Perrin, he said in that surprising bass. Fighting Trollocs and having all kinds of adventures out in the world, so they say. I can still call you Perrin, can't I? Yes, Perrin barked. He was more than tired of this Golden Eyes business. I wish I'd gone with you last year. Dab rubbed his hands together eagerly. Coming home with Aes Sedai and warders here. He made them sound like trophies. All I ever do is herd cows and milk cows, herd cows and milk cows. That and hoe and chop wood. You've had all the luck. What was it like? Elam put in breathlessly. Aes Sedai said you've been all the way to the Great Blight. And I hear you've been to Camelin and Tyr. What's a city like? Are they really 10 times as big as Emmons Field? Did you see a palace? Are there dark friends in the cities? Is the Blight really full of Trollocs and Fades and Warders? Did a Trolloc give you that scar? Voice like a bull or not, Ewan managed a sort of squeaky excitement. I wish I had a scar. Did you see a queen or a king? I think I'd rather see a queen, but a king would be grand. What is the White Tower like? Is it as big as a palace? Fail smiled, amused, but Perrin blinked at the onslaught. Had they forgotten the Trollocs on winter night? Forgotten the Trollocs in the countryside right then? Elam clutched his sword hilt as if he wanted to be off for the Blight on the instant, and Dab was up on his toes, eyes gleaming, and Ellen looked ready to grab Perrin's collar. Adventure? They were idiots. Yet there were hard times coming. Harder than the Two Rivers had seen so far, he was afraid. It could not hurt if they had a little while longer before they learned the truth. His side hurt, but he tried to answer. They seemed disappointed he had never seen the White Tower, or a king or a queen. He thought Berlain might suffice for a queen, but with Fail there, he was not about to mention her. Some other things he shied away from, Falma and the Eye of the World, the Forsaken, Collindor. Dangerous subjects, those, leading inevitably to the Dragon Reborn. He could tell them a little of Camelin, though, and Tyr, of the borderlands and the Blight. It was odd what they accepted and what not. The corrupted landscape of the Blight, seeming to rot while you looked at it, they ate up, and top-knotted Shienaran soldiers, and Ogier steading where Aes Sedai could not wield the power, and Fades were reluctant to enter. But the size of the Stone of Tyr, or the immensity of cities. About his own supposed adventures, he said, "Mainly, I've just tried to keep from having my head split open. That's what adventures are. That and finding a place to sleep for the night and something to eat. You go hungry a lot having adventures, and sleep cold or wet or both." They did not like that very much, or appear to believe it any more than the stone was as big as a small. He reminded himself that he had known as little of the world before he left the Two Rivers. It did not help much. He had never been this wide-eyed, had he? The common room seemed to be hot. He would have taken his coat off, but moving seemed too much effort. "What about Rand and Matt?" Ewan demanded. "If it's all being hungry and getting rained on, why didn't they come home too?" Tam and Abel had come in, Tam with a sword belted on over his coat, and both men with bows. Oddly, the sword looked right on Tam, farm coat or no. So he told it much as he had before, Matt gambling and carousing in taverns and chasing girls, and Rand in his fine coat, with a pretty yellow-haired girl on his arm. He made Elaine a lady, expecting they would never believe the daughter-heir of Andor, and was proved right when they expressed incredulity. Still, it all seemed satisfactory, the kind of thing they wanted to hear, and disbelief faded a bit when Elam pointed out that Fael was a lady, and seemed to be dancing attendance on Perrin pretty sharp. That made Perrin grin. He wondered what they would say if he told them she was cousin to a queen. Fael no longer appeared to be amused for some reason. She turned on him with a stare to match Elaine's haughtiest, stiff-backed and frosty-faced. "You have badgered him enough. He is wounded. Off with you now." For a wonder, they bowed clumsily. Dav made an awkward leg, looking a complete fool, and murmured hasty apologies to her, not him, and turned to go. Their departure was delayed by the arrival of Loyal, stooping through the doorway with his shaggy hair brushing the transom. They stared at the Ogier almost as if seeing him for the first time, then glanced at Fael and hurried on their way. That cold lady's stare of hers did work. When Loyal straightened, his head came just short of the ceiling. His capacious coat pockets bore the usual squared bulges of books, but he carried a huge axe. Its haft stood as tall as he did, and its head, shaped like a wood axe, was at least as big as Perrin's battle axe. "You are hurt," he boomed, as soon as his eyes fell on Perrin. "They told me you had returned, but they did not say you were hurt, or I would have come faster." The axe gave Perrin a start. Among Ogier, putting a long handle on your axe meant being hasty or angry. Ogier seemed to see the two as much the same thing for some reason. Loyal did look angry, tufted ears drawing back, frowning so his dangling eyebrows hung down on his broad cheeks. At having to cut trees, no doubt. Perrin wanted to get him alone and find out if he had seen anything more concerning Alana's doings. Or Varen's. He rubbed his face and was surprised to find it dry. He felt as if he should be sweating. "He is also stubborn," Fael said, turning on Perrin with the same commanding look she had used on Dav and Elam and Ewan. "You should be in bed. Where is Alana, Varen? If she is to heal him, where is she?" "She will come." The Aes Sedai did not look up. She was back into her little book again, frowning thoughtfully, pen poised. "He should still be in a bed." "I will have time for that later," Perrin said firmly. He smiled at her to soften it, but all that did was make her look worried and mutter stubborn under her breath. He could not ask Loyal about the Aes Sedai in front of Varen, but there was something else at least as important. "Loyal, the Waygate is unlocked, and Trollocs coming through. How can that be?" The Ogier's brows sank even deeper, and his ears wilted. My fault, Perrin, he rumbled mournfully. I put both Avendesora leaves on the outside. That locked the way gate on the inside, but from the outside anyone could still open it. The ways have been dark for long generations, yet we grew them. I could not bring myself to destroy the gate. I am sorry, Perrin. It is all my fault. I did not believe a waygate could be destroyed, Pail said. I did not mean destroy exactly. Loyal leaned on his long-handled axe. A waygate was destroyed once, less than 500 years after the breaking, according to Daman, daughter of Allah, daughter of Sopera, because the gate was near a steading that had fallen to the blight. There are 2 or 3 gates lost in the blight as it is. But she wrote that it was very difficult and required 13 Aes Sedai working together with a Sa'angreal. Another attempt she wrote of, by only 9 during the Trolloc Wars, damaged the gate in such a way that the Aes Sedai were pulled into. He cut off, ears wriggling with embarrassment, and knuckled his wide nose. Everyone was staring at him.
Hey, D-Mans, how you doing?
I do let myself be carried away sometimes.
Hope you're doing well, bro.
Yes.
Let's try to show you my mom got me this to hold some of the smaller ones in.
They will die. He grimaced at the thought. The only means of opening the gate again will be for the elders to bring the talisman of
those things that put him in.
Though I suppose an Aes Sedai could put a hole in it. This time he shuddered. Damaging the waygate must have seemed like tearing up a book to him. A moment later, he was grim.
I guess you got a handle so you can carry it too.
I will go now. No, Perrin said sharply. The arrowhead seemed to throb, but it did not really hurt anymore. He was talking too much. His throat was dry. There are Trollocs up there, Loyal. They can fit an Ogier into a cook pot as well as a human. But Perrin, No, Loyal. How are you going to write your book if you go off and get yourself killed? Loyal's ears twitched. It is my responsibility, Perrin. The responsibility.
Hell yeah, man.
Said gently.
Abigail,
You told me what you were doing with the waygate, and I didn't suggest anything.
On mine tomorrow.
Besides,
just today, my back's killing me.
Mother has mentioned. I don't want her coming after me. I will go as soon as Alana heals this arrow.
I guess it doesn't help that I'm sitting on the floor right now.
Then frowned at his hand. Still no sweat. Can I have a drink of water?
Yeah, I got my mom and my aunt into doing some diamond art.
He's burning up.
They put him out pretty quick.
You must. I am here.
Oh, are you?
The dark eye said.
Let me put it on my TV.
From the door at the back
I got my TV
right
there, so let's put you on, bro.
Perrin felt the tingle of the power before Alana's hand replaced Fail's, and she added in a cool, serene voice, "Carry him into the kitchen. The table
my life tonight might be on the shorter side just because I'm hurting today."
And abruptly he realized Loyal had leaned his axe beside the door and picked him up, cradling him in his arms. The waygate is mine, Loyal.
But my back's never been in the best shape.
My responsibility.
I've had 2 surgeries on my back, like 5 or 6 spinal taps.
Loyal was carrying him somewhere,
and a while back I had it was called bacterial meningitis. I had an infection in my spinal fluid.
Mistress Alvier looked worried too.
So yeah, my back is
Mistress Luhan
pretty much shot.
Mother says I can come and be apprenticed to Master Luhan. No, that was a long time.
I got like a scar like about that long going all the way across my back, 2 of them.
He was lying on something hard, listening to a line.
I see that. Nice.
Barbs are caught on bone as well as flesh, and the arrowhead is twisted.
You already got in the
first wound,
somewhat framed?
If the shock does not kill him, I can then heal the damage I have done as well as the rest. There is no other way. He is near the brink now. Nothing to do with him. Fail smiled down at him nervously, her face upside down. Had he really once thought her mouth was too wide? It was just right. He wanted to touch her cheek, but Mistress Alvear and Mistress Luhan were holding his wrists for some reason, leaning with all their weight. Someone was lying across his legs, too, and Loyal's big hands swallowed his shoulders, pressing them flat to the table. Table. Yes, the kitchen table. Bite down, my heart, Fail said from far away. It will hurt. He wanted to ask her what would hurt, but she was pressing a leather-wrapped stick into his mouth. He smelled the leather and the spicewood and her. Would she come hunting with him, running across the endless grassy plains?
I definitely like the pen you're using, D-Man.
Icy cold shivered through him. Vaguely, he recognized the feel of the one power. And then there was pain. He heard the stick snap between his teeth before blackness covered everything. Chapter 44. Perrin opened his eyes slowly, staring up at the plain white plastered ceiling. It took a moment to realize he was in a four-posted bed, lying on a feather mattress with a blanket over him and a goose-down pillow under his head. A myriad of scents danced in his nose, the feathers and the wool of the blanket, a goose roasting, bread and honey cakes baking. One of the Wine Spring Inn's rooms, with unmistakable bright morning light streaming in at the white-curtained windows. Morning. He fumbled at his side. Unbroken skin met his fingers, but he felt weaker than at any time since being shot. A small enough price, though, and a fair enough exchange. His throat.
Oh yeah, D-Man. Tell her I said hi too.
When he moved, Fail leaped
I
up
can
from
see
a chair
your
beside
stream
his
going
stone
right now. I just don't
fireplace,
see the
tossing
chat.
aside a red blanket and stretching.
You got all kinds of nice
She
little
had changed
tools,
to a
D-Man.
darker, narrow-skirted riding dress, and wrinkles in the gray silk said she had slept in that chair. Alana said you needed sleep, she said. He reached toward the white pitcher on the small table beside the bed, and she hurriedly poured a cup of water and held it for him to drink. You need to stay right here for another 2 or 3 days, until you have your strength back. The words sounded normal, except for an undercurrent.
Oh shit, nice. I might have to look for some of those.
What is wrong? She replaced the cup carefully on the bedside table and smoothed her dress. Nothing is wrong. The taut, underlying tone was even clearer. Fail, don't lie to me. I do not lie, she snapped. I will have some breakfast brought up to you, and you're lucky I do that, calling me Fail. He said her name as sternly as he could, and she hesitated, her most arrogant chin-up glare changing to forehead-creasing worry and back again. He met her gaze straight on. She was not going to get away with any fine lady's haughty tricks with him. At last, she sighed. I suppose you have a right to know, but you are still staying in that bed until Alana and I say you can get up. Loyal and Gall are gone. Gone? He blinked in confusion. What do you mean, gone? They left? In a way. The sentries saw them go, this morning, at first light, trotting off into the westwood together. None of them thought anything of it. Certainly none tried to stop them, and Ogier and Aiel. I heard of it less than an hour ago. They were talking about trees, Perrin. About how the Ogier sing to trees. Trees, Perrin growled. It's that bloody Waygate. Burn me, I told him not to. They'll get themselves killed before they reach it. Throwing off the blanket, he swung his legs over the side of the bed, wobbling to his feet. He had nothing on, he realized, not even his small clothes. But if they expected to keep him caged under a blanket, they were sadly mistaken. He could see everything folded neatly on the tall-backed chair by the door, with his boots beside it and his axe hanging from its belt from a peg on the wall. Stumbling to his clothes, he began dressing as quickly as he could. What are you doing? Fail demanded. You put yourself back in that bed. One fist on her hip, she pointed commandingly, as if her finger could transport him there. They can't have gotten that far, he told her. Not a foot. Gall won't ride, and Loyal always did claim he trusted his own feet more than any horse. I can catch them up on Stepper by midday latest. Pulling his shirt over his head, he left it hanging loose over his breeches and sat down. Dropped, actually, to draw on his boots. You are mad, Pernebara. What chance you can even find them in that forest? I'm not so bad at tracking myself. I can find them. He smiled at her, but she was not having any. You can get yourself killed, you hairy fool. Look at you. You can hardly stand. You would fall out of the saddle before you had gone a mile. Hiding the effort involved, he...
Alright, I'm gonna call into this live for tonight. I'm just not doing too good tonight. My back's killing me. I thought I'd get on for a little bit and say what's up to everyone, but definitely paying for it now. I want to thank everyone for stopping by, and everyone continues to stop by. I definitely appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe out there.